You know we wouldn't ask if we had any other choice. That's what my mom said, standing in the doorway with a bag already slung over her shoulder. My dad was behind her carrying a suitcase. My little brother was in the car, watching a video on his phone looking like he didn't even know or care where he was. They needed a place to stay, just for a few weeks, while they figured things out, and I said yes. Because that's what you do, right? You say yes. You're the stable one. The one with the apartment lease in your name. The rent paid 6 months ahead. The fridge that stays stocked even when you skip lunch. I'd just lost my job, yeah, but I had savings. I wasn't panicking, not yet. And I figured, well, it's family. I gave them keys. I told them they could use the second bedroom. The futon folds out. The place was small, yeah, but it could work, just for a few weeks. My brother was the first red flag. He walked straight into the master bedroom. Mine. Dropped his bag on the bed like he was claiming a hotel suite. I laughed, assuming it was a joke. He didn't laugh back. That night he didn't move. I slept on the futon. My dad said just let him have it for now. He's under a lot of stress. Right, stress. I forgot that I wasn't allowed to be stressed. I was just the host. Week 2, they brought in a second dresser, then a bookshelf. Then my mom rearranged the kitchen to make it more functional. She called it optimizing. I called it disorienting. I couldn't find a single clean fork for days. By week 3, they stopped pretending they were guests. My dad started working from my couch, conference calls on speaker. My brother changed the Netflix password. When I asked why, he said, "You don't pay for it this month, remember?" My mom started locking the bathroom when she wasn't using it. I came home one day and found her, wiping down the fridge with bleach. She said, "We're trying to keep things clean. You've been kind of all over the place lately." They were living in my space, eating my groceries, using my Wi-Fi, sleeping in my bed. And somehow, I was the one knocking. They kept calling it temporary, but their boxes were multiplying. And the weeks, they were turning into months. I told myself to be patient, that it would end, that something would shift. But the only thing that shifted was the thermostat. They started setting it 5 degrees higher than I liked, said it helped them sleep better, barely slept at all. I'd lie awake on that creaky futon, staring at the ceiling, wondering how I became a stranger in my own apartment. I didn't complain, not really. I asked questions, tried to set boundaries, but every time I brought something up, about rent, bills, space, they'd look at me like I was being selfish, ungrateful. "You always said we were welcome. You're the one who offered. You're not seriously going to kick us out, are you?" So I backed down. Again, and again, and again. Until one night, I came home to find the Wi-Fi disconnected, my Spotify logged out, my door slightly ajar, and my toothbrush moved. I asked my brother, "What happened?" He shrugged. "Oh," he said, "we changed the password. You weren't using it much anyway." I stood there in the doorway of the apartment I paid for and heard him say it again like it was nothing. "Also, can you knock before coming into the kitchen? Mom doesn't like surprises." That was the moment something shifted, not in them, in me. Something snapped, quietly, internally, because suddenly I realized this wasn't temporary anymore. This was occupation, and I was done pretending this was still my home. I used to love coming home, that quiet click of the door unlocking, the familiar creak in the hallway, the soft hum of my fridge. It meant safety, ownership, routine. Now, I'd stand outside my own front door and hesitate, because walking in didn't feel like walking into my place anymore. It felt like I was intruding on theirs. They never said it outright. That would have been too easy, too honest. Instead, it was all these little layered things that, by themselves, meant nothing, but stacked together, they told a different story. My name was still on the lease, my paycheck still paid the rent, but everything inside, it was like a slow erasure of my existence. My brother started holding court in the living room like it was his studio, shoes off, feet on the coffee table, gaming headset glued to his ears while he yelled into a mic with people I'd never met. When I asked him to keep it down one night, just one night, he took off the headset and said, You're home early. Again. Like I'd ruined his plans. My mom turned my spice cabinet into her vitamin shelf, took down my framed print in the kitchen, and put up a wooden sign that said, "Love makes this house a home." The irony nearly killed me. I tried cooking once after a long day of job hunting. Burned some onions, forgot to fan the smoke. My dad came out of the bedroom rubbing his eyes like I'd woken a sleeping bear. "You should have opened a window before you started," he snapped. "It's common sense." That night I ordered takeout and ate it on the floor of my room, which, by the way, was now the smallest room in the apartment. My brother had claimed the master bedroom on day one and never moved. My mom said he needed the space to focus. Dad said it wasn't a big deal. "It's just temporary," they kept repeating, like some hypnotic spell they thought would keep me from noticing how permanent their presence had become. But I noticed when the trash piled up and I was still the only one taking it out. I noticed when the toilet broke and no one called the landlord except me. I noticed when they held a family meeting, without me, about rearranging the living room for better flow. I came home that day to find my desk in the hallway. Just moved. No explanation, no warning. I stood there for a solid minute, staring at it. Then I asked my dad what happened. He didn't even look up from his tablet, He needed more space for the air purifier. I felt something crack then, a hairline fracture down the middle of my spine. It didn't snap. Not yet, but it was coming. I opened my laptop that night and checked my bank account, down 40% since they moved in. Groceries, electricity, water bills, everything creeping higher. None of them offered a cent. And here's the kicker. I found a second Venmo account under my brother's name. Payments going out with captions like deposit and first month. They were applying for places without me, using my address, my credit. I confronted him. He didn't deny it. "We just needed a reference. You've got the best score. What's the big deal?" The big deal? The big deal is that this apartment is mine. The big deal is that they moved in just for a few weeks and now I was knocking before walking into my own kitchen. The big deal is that they were planning their next step using the ground I paid for, and none of them were planning to tell me. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in the dark listening to them talk, in the next room. Their laughter, their plans, their lives unfolding comfortably inside the walls I no longer recognized. I stared at the ceiling and asked myself a question I never thought I'd have to ask. Whose apartment is this? And the answer hit me harder than I expected. Not mine. Not anymore. Not unless I did something about it. It was the third time they forgot. Rent was due. Again. And again. My mother said it with that same look. Soft eyes, tilted head, almost apologetic but not quite. "We forgot this month. Things have just been so hectic, you understand." Hectic. I understood that word too well. I understood it as the electricity bill climbed past $300 from round-the-clock heating. I understood it as my credit card statement bled with grocery charges, gas, takeout, even pet food, for a dog that wasn't mine. I understood it as my savings dropped into red zone territory, while they watched cable and asked if I wanted anything when they picked up lunch. No one asked if I could still afford this. Because they weren't really forgetting. They were deciding that I'd keep covering everything because I hadn't snapped yet, because I still answered their texts, because I hadn't changed the locks yet. That day, I came home to find a notice slid under the door. Late fee applied. $125, rent short. Again. I stared at the paper while my brother yelled into his headset from the other room, playing some online game like he was trying to shatter the walls with his voice. My dad was asleep on the couch. My mom was in the kitchen humming while stirring soup I bought with my card. I stood in the hallway holding the notice and thought, they really don't think I'll do anything. They think I'll grumble, maybe complain. But ultimately, I'd fold. I always had, until I checked my credit report. It was late. I was alone. They'd all gone out to see a movie I wasn't invited to. I logged in just to check, just to be safe. 3 hard inquiries, all recent, all from apartment complexes 2 cities away, all listing my name as the co-signer. I blinked. Then I laughed. Quietly, bitterly. They didn't even ask. They'd used my name, my social, my good credit, the one thing I had left, and risked it without hesitation. I sat at my desk, staring at the report, and something inside me settled. Not rage, not sadness, clarity. I opened a blank document and titled it in bold, Exit Plan. It wasn't revenge. It was survival. I started small, opened a new bank account at a different institution, changed my passwords, ordered a new debit card delivered to my work address instead of home, began uploading everything I owned to a storage app, photos, receipts, scanned documents. Every spare moment I had, I packed digitally, emotionally, silently. The next time my brother asked me to Venmo him for Uber, I smiled and said, "Sure." Then I froze my credit file. The next time my mom said, "Oh, I forgot to pay you for groceries," I said, "It's okay." Then I applied for a new apartment under a different name, my full legal one, the one they never used. When I got approved, I didn't tell anyone. Just bought moving boxes, stored them at work. I became a ghost in my own home, not because they pushed me out, but because I was preparing to vanish. Because this wasn't my apartment anymore. It was a nest of leeches, and I was done bleeding. Gave myself 14 days. Not because I had to, but because I wanted it perfect. Clean. No drama. No screaming matches in the hallway. No teary-eyed guilt trips from my mother. No, after everything we've done for you, from my dad. No snark from my brother. Just gone. I named the folder on my desktop escape file, encrypted it, backed it up, printed hard copies of the essentials, lease agreements, bank transfers, credit freeze letters, new address paperwork, even screenshots of the forged applications, just in case. Every night, I packed a little more, quietly, things they wouldn't notice at first. My passport, my old journals, my laptop charger, the kitchen knife I liked, my meds. Each item disappeared from the apartment like a loose thread being pulled. They never asked. They were too busy with their own orbit. My brother yelling at strangers in multiplayer games, my dad zoning out to cable news, my mom pretending to meal plan with groceries I paid for. It was almost laughable. They were so sure I'd stay that I was too soft, too polite, too family-oriented. But here's the thing they never understood about me. Just because I'm quiet doesn't mean I'm weak. I started dropping hints, not for them, for me. I canceled the auto pay on the utilities. Set the lease to terminate in 30 days. Stopped stocking the fridge, turned off the app that ordered the weekly paper towels and toilet paper. No one said a word. They didn't notice, not until the water started running cold. Not until the trash wasn't magically empty. Not until I stopped saying good morning. The new apartment approved my move-in date. I visited once, stood in the empty space, no furniture, no noise, just the echo of my own footsteps. It felt sacred, like I'd stepped into a version of myself I hadn't met yet, one who was done asking permission to exist. Back at the old place, I packed my final box during one of their movie nights. They'd left without inviting me again. I didn't mind. I packed the last of my clothes, took the TV remote, wiped the browser history, unplugged the modem and set it in a box labeled Return. Then I left a note, printed, black ink, taped, to the fridge. This is not your home. The lease is terminated. Utilities shut off. I'm not coming back. Walked out just before midnight. One suitcase, one duffel bag, one envelope with all the proof I'd need in case they tried to come after me. I left the keys on the doormat, locked the door. Didn't look back, because this wasn't a maybe anymore. It wasn't just temporary. This was a takeover I hadn't consented to, and now, it was over. They'd wake up the next morning to no Wi-Fi, no hot water, and no host. Just an empty apartment and a legal notice on the door. And maybe, just maybe, they'd finally realize the quiet one was never weak. He was just waiting to leave. The right way. They say revenge is loud, slamming doors, screaming matches, explosions, But not this time. This time, revenge was silence. At 7:42 a.m., my phone buzzed. Missed call, Mom. Missed call, Dad. Missed call, Kyle. Then a flurry of texts. Where are you? Did you go somewhere? The lights won't turn on. The stove's dead. No Wi-Fi. I think the router broke. Call me. Your brother said the fridge isn't working. This better not be a joke. What is this note? I turned off the phone. Finished my coffee. It was my first morning in the new apartment. No furniture, just a mattress on the floor and one folding chair. No noise, no drama, no questions. Just quiet. I checked my email. The final confirmation from the landlord had arrived. Lease termination processed. Effective immediately. I smiled. By the time they realized what was happening, it was already done. The lease ended, the utilities cut, the locks changed, the bank auto payments gone, and me, gone. No address, no key, no trace, except for the note taped. To the fridge, printed in bold black ink, "This is not your home." At 8:13 a.m., my brother sent a voice memo. Bro. What the actual Like, seriously? You left? What do you expect us to do? There's no water, no heat, no Wi-Fi. Are you having a breakdown or something? No, not a breakdown. A breakout. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the document I'd prepared the week before, a PDF titled Final Record, photos of my now empty bedroom, screenshots of the Venmo activity under my brother's name, the forged rental applications using my credit, statements showing 6 months of unpaid rent from anyone but me, and the termination letter signed by me submitted legally and with notice. The next call came from my dad, then my mom, then a text from her. "We didn't raise you like this." That one made me pause. No, they didn't raise me like this. They raised me to tolerate, to endure, to absorb, but somewhere between the third unpaid bill and the second forged lease, I realized something. They were never planning to leave. I was the exit plan, the fallback, the one who had it together, until I didn't, until I refused to carry it anymore. At 9:45 a.m., a final message came through from my brother. "You think this is funny? You've ruined everything." Funny. No, not funny. Fair. They ruined my credit, my space, my sleep, my sanity, all. I did was give them a mirror and walk away while they stared into it. I shut the phone off permanently, dropped it into a drawer and walked out onto the balcony. The sun was just breaking through the clouds. Cars rolled by below. Life moved on. No shouting, no guilt, no footsteps overhead. Just me, free. For the first time in months, I took a deep breath and realized they can't take anything from me now, because I already left. By noon, they had switched from confusion to rage. The tone of the texts turned sharp. The missed calls stopped being concerned. They became confrontational, accusatory, panicked. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about them, about the lights not working, about the fridge spoiling, about the landlord calling because the lease was terminated without warning. They were scrambling, not because they lost a home, but because they lost control. And I knew it, because that's when the messages I changed. "You left your family. What kind of man does that? You embarrassed us. We trusted you. Your mother is crying. She feels betrayed. We can't believe you'd stoop this low. After everything we've done for you." That last one got me. Everything. "You've done for me?" I sat at my new table, cheap, clean mine, and pulled up my spreadsheet. The one labeled financial drain. It was simple, really. 6 months of rent paid entirely by me, $8,400. Utilities, $1,790. Groceries and delivery, $3,260. Forged credit checks under my name, 3. Emotional bandwidth burned to ash. Incalculable. Everything they'd done for me boiled down to draining me until I couldn't tell where I ended and obligation began. I didn't reply. They didn't deserve a reaction, but that didn't stop them from trying. At 4:17 p.m., my cousin messaged me, one I hadn't heard from in a year. "Your mom is really hurting right now. This is all over the group chat. She's saying you blindsided them. I responded once. She knew the rent wasn't being paid. She knew they were using my credit. She knew I wasn't sleeping in my own room. No reply. At 6:02 p.m., my aunt posted something vague on Facebook. Some people forget who fed them when they were hungry. Just remember, blood doesn't mean loyalty. Comment section lit up like wildfire. Sympathy emojis, vague subtweets, people from back home reposting, speculating. No one tagged me. Of course they didn't. They wanted to shape the story without my voice in it, but I didn't need to speak. I had proof. I had timelines, statements, screenshots. I had a document saved, called in case they try anything. I wasn't just gone. I was shielded. At 9 p.m., my phone buzzed one more time. It was a voice memo. My dad. Look, I don't know what kind of point you're trying to make, but you crossed a line. This isn't how family solves problems. You walked away from us, from your mother, from your responsibility, and you'll regret this when you're older. I saved the memo, didn't play it twice. Instead, I wrote 3 words on a sticky note and slapped it to my fridge. Not my responsibility, not anymore, because here's what they don't teach you about family. Sometimes the people who raise you are the first ones to convince you that love means servitude, that loyalty means silence, that care means collapsing for the sake of peace. But peace without boundaries isn't peace, it's occupation, and I'd spent enough time being occupied. So now, I wasn't running, I wasn't hiding. I was healing in a place with no shared Wi-Fi, no guilt-laced dinners, no "we forgot this month," just 4 walls, a working lock, and the quiet knowledge that I finally did what they never expected. I chose myself. 3 weeks passed. No texts, no calls, no Facebook shade, nothing. Just silence, the kind that hums, the kind that buzzes in your ears when you're finally far enough away to hear yourself think. I kept expecting something to snap. Maybe the landlord would call. Maybe a letter would arrive. Maybe someone would show up at my door playing the guilt card in person. But nothing came. Just that silence. I used to hate silence. Back when I lived under their noise, their demands, their endless emotional overdrafts. Now, silence was sanctuary. Every morning, I woke up without tension in my chest. No thudding footsteps in the hallway, no passive-aggressive comments from the kitchen, no echoes of shame disguised as concern. Just me, breathing freely in a space that was mine. I decorated slowly, not because I couldn't afford to, but because I wanted every item, every piece of furniture, every picture on the wall to be a decision I made, not something I inherited, tolerated, or was guilted into accepting. I bought a used bookshelf and filled it with things they used to roll their eyes at. Old sci-fi paperbacks, vinyl records I never got to play, a framed print I'd pulled from the trash after my mom replaced it with one of her inspirational quotes. I placed it above the desk. This is your space, own it. And I did. The best part wasn't even the piece. It was the distance, emotional, financial, mental. For the first time in years, my credit report was clean. My Venmo wasn't bleeding. My fridge was stocked with what I liked. And if something broke, I fixed it, without someone blaming me for why it broke in the first place. Then one afternoon, a letter came. Handwritten. No return address. The kind of envelope you recognize before you even open it. Inside, a single sheet of paper from my SO. Mother, we didn't mean for things to get out of control. We just needed time. You could have said something. You didn't have to disappear, that wasn't fair. Fair. Fair was me covering rent for 6 months without so much as a thank you. Fair was watching them claim the best room in the house while I slept on a futon I bought myself. Fair was being told to knock before entering a kitchen I paid to stock. Fair was leaving without burning the whole thing down. Didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because her letter didn't come with a check, or an apology, or any real accountability. Just another attempt to rewrite the story. But this time, I was holding the pen. I stood on my new balcony that night and looked out at the city. The noise. The light, The absolute indifference of it all. It didn't care who I was, didn't demand explanations, didn't expect me to play the role of caretaker, provider, silent supporter. Out here, I wasn't the responsible one. I wasn't the fallback plan. I was just me, unapologetic, unbothered, unreachable. They called it temporary. But what they never understood was that I never left because things got hard. I left because they refused to see how easy they made it for me to go. This wasn't their home anymore. It never was, and neither was I.